Welcome to another VHIA weekly podcast. My name is Bree Marinier, Senior Workplace Relations Consultant, and I'm joined by Emma Scott, also a Senior Workplace Relations Consultant. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks, Bree.
So, as everybody will be familiar, we usually kick off these podcasts with a clue so that Emma can guess what we're talking about today. So we're going to show on screen a photo. And for those that are listening to this podcast rather than watching, Emma, could you describe the photo that's shown on screen right now?
So there's a table and there's lots of people standing around that table looking at whatever is on that table that I can't quite work out. Oh, no, actually, they're not looking at the table. They're looking at the people, each other.
Looking at each other.
Yeah.
So based on that image, can you have a go at what we're talking about today?
Well, it looks like they're working hard, probably 9 to 5. So maybe something to do with, well, not overtime, but ordinary hours of work, maybe?
That's a pretty good guess. But what are they doing around that table?
Well, there's no chairs, so they are
Yeah.
standing.
Okay. There's a hint.
Standing, maybe. I think there's some agreements that have the gender standing committee, maybe. That might be the topic.
Yep, that's it. One of our only standing committees. So today we're going to be talking about the gender-based standing committee. That's been established recently. So can you tell us why was this particular committee established?
Well, I'm very lucky we're doing this topic because I do know something about it because I have been attending those meetings. So essentially there's 3 agreements: the allied health professionals, the nurses and midwives, and the mental health agreement that require a gender-based standing committee to be established within 3 months of the agreements commencing operating.
And does the committee only operate in relation to these 3 agreements?
No, it doesn't. So although only the 3 agreements specifically require a standing committee, any of the outcomes, I guess, that are discussed in that committee have a broader outcome that's applicable to all the health sector employers and employees.
And what's the purpose of the committee?
So establishing the gender-based standing committee is a key way to drive change towards a more diverse and inclusive culture within public health employers. And it's also really demonstrating the commitment from all parties to issues of workplace gender equality, and people that are passionate about the subject, but previously there hasn't really been a proper platform to connect with one another on those items.
And do the agreements outline any specific requirements of the committee?
Yeah, so they do. They're actually slightly different, but what we've got on screen, we've got a list of what those are. So review the audit results under the Gender Equality Act 2020. Then we've got promote gender equality initiatives. Then we've got identify information gaps and develop a framework to address the gaps, which might include additional audits. Identify and address any gender pay gaps, and then also develop and implement an action plan to address other gender-related issues such as gendered violence, including sexual harassment.
Okay, and how often is the committee required to meet?
So the agreement stipulates that we're required to meet at least 4 times a year. So at the moment, we've been meeting once every 2 months, and we just finished our last meeting in October. So this year we've met the minimum requirements for the number of meetings.
And do the agreements require the committee to be comprised of certain groups?
Yeah, they do. So they require that the committee be made in conjunction with the department and be comprised of representative CEOs or their nominees, the unions, and then also us, the VHIA.
So who has attended the meetings so far?
So even though it's only in a small number of agreements, we've invited all the relevant unions to attend. So far, we've had the ANMF, VAPA, HSU, and MSAV attend. And this is really, instead of having separate meetings, we're all across it, shared with all the unions for everyone that wants to be involved in the process.
And what about health service representatives?
Yeah, so we have a few individuals who attend from the Victorian Health Organisation Gender Equity Network, and they attend on behalf of health services. So they also separately meet every 4 to 6 weeks to discuss pragmatic approaches to implementing gender equality initiatives in the health service environment.
And who better to have on the committee than the individuals who are undertaking the work related to the Gender Equality Act?
Yes, they have very valuable insights into the challenges health services face in improving gender equality. The committee is a mechanism for this network and others to bridge the gap and spark transparent conversations about the gender equality or equity issues in public health.
And what have been the key agenda items for the committee so far?
So, there's been a significant focus on the activities of the Commission for Gender Equality in the public sector. Specifically, we've discussed key items from the 2022 baseline report.
And what is the baseline report?
So it essentially provides an overview of the current state and nature of gender inequality across the span of organisations reporting for the first time under the Gender Equality Act 2020, which is a Victorian act. So it does have other sectors, but it does obviously include health services. And what it does is it provides insights on where the challenges and the gaps are for progressing gender equality and focusing on efforts to improve them.
And what data did the report include?
So the baseline report summarised the data into 5 chapters of indicators, which we've just got on the screen. So workforce gender composition and segregation, equal pay, workplace sexual harassment, recruitment and promotion practices, leave and flexible work.
We could probably talk for hours, but the podcast does need to be short and sweet. But could you just touch on some notable findings from each of these chapters of the report?
Yeah, yep. So we've got across some of them. So the first one, we've got workforce gender composition and segregation. So 78% of the public health employees are women compared to 66% of broader public sector. However, women are underrepresented in full-time and leadership roles. When it comes to equal pay, the statewide gender pay gap has increased in Victoria and it rose from 11.2% in November 2020 to 14.3% in 2021. Then, in terms of workplace sexual harassment, 7% of women and 4% of men reported experiencing sexual harassment in the preceding 12 months. With formal reporting of workplace sexual harassment, though, is very low, and that only 17 of respondents made a formal complaint about the sexual harassment that they had experienced. For recruitment and promotion practices, for recruitments and exits, for recruitment, 75% of women, 25% of men. With exits, it's got 73% women and then 27% men, closely matching the gender balance of the workforce there. And then essentially there's just some highlights there that more data is required to understand the impact of gender bias in recruitment and promotion practice on gender diverse people and women with intersectional attributes. Then leave and flexible work. The prevalence of formal flexible working arrangements is 24%, with 83% of those on formal flexible work arrangements being women. So that's a relatively high number there. Then you've got, on average, women's parental leave lasted 8 times longer than men's. The average weeks were 28 for women and 3 for men, which is obviously quite different there. And then of those who access carers leave, the bigger proportion was women, being 68%.
So, in addition to the baseline report, VHIA has also reviewed some of the gender equality plans.
Yeah, we did. So we reviewed 15 health services gender equality action plans covering metro, rural, and regional health services. And what we did was we presented some slides on the 7 indicators that the Gender Equality Commission recommends and what we thought were themes across the health services within those indicators.
And was there a major theme across the indicators?
Yeah, so I think there was one major theme that came across all of the indicators, and it was really around the data collection of information related to the indicators. So, for example, indicator one was gender composition of the workforce, and there was stuff around building gender equity, diversity, and/or inclusion into workforce planning, including the data collection. So, really about going through a process of having systems in place. So, then that enables health services to more easily report on progress throughout the reporting time periods.
And what other activities has the committee undertaken?
So, as a key enabler to gender equality, unions express particular interest in access to flexible work arrangements. So, the VHA has consulted with the committee in relation to the development of a best practice guide for flexible working arrangements, which is based on the nurses and midwives guide that had already been developed a while ago.
And does this guide include the recent changes to the National Employment Standards?
Yeah, it does. So what it's got in there is adding that pregnancy is a circumstance that entitles to an employee to request a flexible work arrangement, and then also tighten the circumstances around when employers can refuse, including that you have to meet before any refusal may occur. So we hope to settle that soon and issue that to the field once that consultation is closed out.
Great. And can we anticipate gender equity to be a key theme in the next bargaining round?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we've already seen the nurses and midwives have made some claims in that space around gender, and then what we're really looking forward to see what else comes from the unions in terms of ideas to try and improve gender equality.
Great. Thanks for taking us through the Gender Equity Standing Committee.
Thanks, Bree.